Let's go ahead and get started. And I'm happy to welcome all of you. This is the monthly call series hosted by the American Bar Association Dispute Resolution Sections Relational Practices Task Force. That's a mouthful. And if you want to learn more about the task force and upcoming calls, we have calls scheduled through June. You can go to relationalpractices.xyz. And all of you know, I'm Kim Wright. I'm the co-chair of the task force, and I'm your host for this call. We want to thank the ABA and especially Gina Brown, who gives us the platform to make this call possible. And as part of our mission, the task force showcases relational practices from many perspectives. The recordings of previous calls are available on our website, and there's quite a diverse group there. In just a moment, we're going to have short introductions of everyone on the call, and then we'll turn it over to our program. On each call, we have a space holder who helps us to ground and reflect. And today we're really pleased to have Hilda Poro in that role. I was thinking, Hilda, I think I met you 20 years ago.
At least that's crazy.
Yeah, we were both participating in IHL holistic lawyer activities. And Hilda is a shaman, life coach, and lawyer. And her goal in each role that she plays is to support individuals in finding and living their truth, their own language of spirit. And of course, we have a speaker on each call that serves as a conversation starter, and our speaker today is Eileen Barker. And I met Eileen, we figured out at the Harvard Insight Initiative, and that's been more than a decade ago. She's a forgiveness teacher, forgiveness coach, and a leader in the movement to integrate emotional healing and forgiveness and conflict resolution. In 2016, she received the Champion of Worldwide Forgiveness Alliance Award, or the Champion of Forgiveness Award from the Worldwide Forgiveness Alliance, and she shares that with people like Desmond Tutu. And she's going to speak to us for about 10 minutes, and then we'll all just jump in together. And we'll have Hilda close the space, and we'll shut off the recording towards the end. And then when we stop the recording, then we can talk about anything we want to talk about, not just about today's topic, but whatever's up for us. And if you want to share news or a challenge that you're having, you know, I'm available to stay a few minutes after the hour if you want to keep talking. So we really hope that these calls are seeds for a relational community, and we want you to be not just listeners, but to get to know each other. So Hilda, I'm going to turn the call over to you and let you turn it over to Eileen when you're ready.
And you said around 5 minutes or so?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Wherever you all are, start to pay attention to your breath. If it feels comfortable, you can gently close your eyes. In the breathing, just noticing how the breath is always going in and going out. And connect inside your body, allowing your weight to be carried by the chair beneath you, the couch, whatever you're sitting on. Just let your weight be carried wherever you are. And gently scan your body for any place of tension, any place you habitually know you hold tension, and any place where tension may be hiding. And send breath there, allowing the breath to gently soften any tension. And continue noticing the breathing going in, going out. Fully receiving each inhale, and fully letting go and gently relaxing with each exhale. And send your attention into your low belly, into your gut. Just notice the energy present there. Notice if there's a sense or a feeling, a word or an image. And then shift your energy and attention into your heart space. Getting a sense of the energy there present in your heart space. Noticing again if there's a word or an image. And shifting your energy and attention now to your third eye, to the seat of intuition, your mind's eye. And again, first simply noticing. And set the intention to create harmony between these three wisdom centers so that you can listen to all our conversations from all three, not just with your ears and your intellect, but fully receiving any information that's here to be integrated within you. And just a few more deep breaths, letting all of this settle in your system, your physical system, your energetic system. And then intending to maintain this calm through our call. When you feel ready, you can gently open your eyes and be fully present. And Eileen, whenever you're ready.
Thank you.
Sorry. Eileen, I forgot to have everybody introduce themselves real quickly. Can we do that real so you know who's here?
Yeah, I'd love to. I just wanted to just say thank you, though, Hilda, before the energy shifts. That was just really lovely, really appreciated.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to hear people's introductions.
Does somebody want to volunteer to go first, or do you want me to call on someone?
Oh,
Tessa, we need to unmute you.
Okay, can you hear me now? So I'm Tessa, I'm calling from Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I'm very interested in forgiveness and in Eileen's work. So I'm here out of great curiosity.
Thank you. It's good to see you again so soon. Who's next? Bonnie.
Hi. Bonnie Silvestri. I thought I should go right after Tessa Silvestri. Spelled differently. My daughter's working on her family tree, so maybe there's some relation there. But I am just very interested in this topic and deal with some volatile situations at work. So this will be very good to hear.
Good to see you, Bonnie.
Good to see you too.
Next.
I'm Kristen Hall. I am a collaborative attorney and mediator in Des Moines, and I do a lot of elder mediation, and a lot of family history comes into play. And so I'm very curious about this topic because a lot of things from the past come into the present.
Good to see you, Kristen. Next.
Hi everyone. I'm Gail Silverstein. I teach mediation and representation at UC Hastings in San Francisco. And I've heard of Eileen's work, and I think I might have sat in on a lecture about it maybe about 10 years ago, and I'm just needing a refresher and really interested in the topic.
Good to see you, Gail.
Good seeing you.
Jacqueline.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Harani. I'm an attorney here in New York City. I just recently quit my job to launch my own company working with small businesses and social entrepreneurs. So it's a lot of transition right now. And I was actually just talking the other day to people about how I'm personally struggling with forgiveness. And then I saw Kim's post about this. I thought, well, how timely. So I'm very interested to learn and see what we talk about today.
Good to see you, Jacqueline. Hilda, do you want to add anything to what I said about you?
I think you covered it. I guess the most recent, my transition, piggybacking on yours. I recently opened a wellness center. My main office is in one town. I'm in West Palm Beach, Florida. And I just opened a wellness center with life coaches. I'm a certified life coach and intending to practice law there and really up the idea that that having affairs in order is part of wellness. So upping the holistic perspective and kind of bringing that together.
Thank you. I'm going to mute myself, and I suggest everybody mute so that we don't have background noise. And now I'm going to turn it over to you, Eileen. Thank you for letting me let everybody weigh in.
Yeah, I'm glad. It's good to hear who's here. I'm trying to just get something off my screen there. Okay. So hi, welcome. Some of you I know, some of you look familiar. I used to teach at Hastings, Gail. I don't probably before you were there, but it's wonderful to share. This is a topic, forgiveness, that's very near and dear to my heart. And I always love talking to lawyers about it, especially because I just think it has so much bearing on the work we do with people. And yet, I know I'm trying to mute Bonnie, and it's not.
Sorry, I don't know how to mute.
Well, I'm trying to do it for you, but it's not. Let me see. Maybe Kim, you can do it if you're the host. I can't do it. Everybody else, I think, is muted. Anyway, I know that it has a lot of relevance in our personal lives as well as professionally. And I'll just say, since it's going to be a brief intro, that for me, I was practicing law many years ago. Then I became a mediator. And my window into this was just seeing how wounding conflict can be. You know, particularly I started looking at that in terms of the parties and clients and just what they went through when they were involved with a legal dispute. And that really there's nothing in the traditional legal system that addresses that at all. I mean, we start kind of touching it when we learn about how to really listen to people and pay attention to their emotions, which most people aren't even trained in that, but there is some of that. But as a mediator, even I started seeing that people would go through a mediation, often settle their case, but the animosity and the mistrust was left there completely unaddressed. And because we aren't taught how to do that and we aren't given the tools. And it really bothered me that people would say, well, this was a successful mediation because the lawsuit's over. And yet I knew very well that these people were really still very upset and angry. So that's how I got interested in forgiveness originally. Like the question I asked was, what does it take to really, create peace? What does it take to really heal conflict? And that is at some point along the way, I started realizing that was how I saw myself, as a healer of conflict. And so, so I started exploring forgiveness, and over the last, about 18 years, studying it, leading classes, guiding other people in it, also developing something that I call forgiveness coaching. And now I train other people how to do forgiveness coaching, but it's a whole, it was realizing that there are steps and there is a process and that people can learn this and people can teach it. And so I thought, this is really missing. This is needed. First of all, we all need it because, life, and then our clients need it if they're ever going to really come back to be at peace. And so it's been a great passion of mine from that point of view, and just sort of being privileged really to witness people go through this process and to see not only does it help people come back to peace, but how transformational it can be. So what I mean by that is that people start out, maybe it's a family conflict, maybe, whatever it is, it's this sort of problematic situation. And that if they are inclined to really look at it more transformationally, what they will end up discovering is that this problem becomes a doorway. And it's a doorway into something that the way Ken Cloak puts it is, every conflict teaches us what we most need to learn. And I heard him say that. I've heard him say that so many times. And then I started realizing, oh yeah, right, it is. It's reflecting back to us this place where we feel like we don't have the tools we need. We don't quite have, know how to navigate it. And yet right embedded in that, really challenging situation is the opportunity to learn something very, very significant for ourselves. And it often is in the area of healing core wounding. Oftentimes when I work with clients privately, as I said, in a coaching practice, we'll find out that what the dynamic is in the particular conflict, say with the ex-husband or whatever, the mother, it's like part of a pattern that's been there for most of their life. And so when we can really kind of connect those dots and then heal it, it's quite transformational. And that is, and then seeing like, yes, this was here to teach them exactly what they most needed to learn. So it's quite amazing. Just last week, I was approached by a woman who's in probate litigation with her father's. I guess he, like the last 5 years of his life, he had married a younger woman, and this litigation is with the new wife, and she came to me. The woman came to me because she really wanted to be able to find a good resolution. She said she knew her father would want that. She didn't want to have to, be in court and so forth. And yet the woman's lawyer wouldn't respond to them. It was like complete stonewalling, and her attorney had said no, not to call he didn't want her to contact the woman. So she felt very sort of stuck. And what she really wanted was a way through it that felt like it had integrity for her. She wanted to be able to like be in her heart and find a good way through with this woman. And so we did one consultation, which was a lot of, I imagine you guys have also, some of you have been in this position of really just giving people that sort of permission, like, you get to still bring your heart, even though you're in this legal setting, even though you're dealing with lawyers, you still get to bring your values. And a lot of times, they're not hearing that message from their lawyers or anybody else, and they feel pretty disempowered by it. So just letting her kind of bring her whole self and what she wanted, and then gave her some ideas about what she could say to her lawyer and how maybe she could approach the other side. But she ended up telling me a few days later that the very next day, the other side's lawyer made contact. After all these months of stonewalling them, made contact and said they would go to mediation. And so she was just so happy with it. But my point about it is that I find that when we come back to our values, and we come back to our heart and just stay in alignment with the things that we know are true, there's a power in it. And it's not something that I can explain logically, but I just see it over and over and over again. So I feel like it's like just sort of the first step for many people is to just really come back to themselves and not feel like they have to get pulled out into this, really difficult adversarial system. And it's so beautiful to just watch things then kind of unfold around that. So that is just like sort of a snippet. I know this is supposed to be seeds of the conversation. So I think I see more people. Hello, welcome. Just to give you a taste of what I'm looking at in this area, both for clients and then also, like people said, some of you mentioned that in your own lives, it's up for you. And I think that that is always the place to start. If you are someone who's interested in being able to help clients in this way, you definitely need to, I always recommend to people that, help learn it yourself, practice it yourself. It's the best way of learning about this. And for some of us, that's really our interest, is really because of our own need, and that's fine too. So I'm happy to talk about it on a personal level, on a professional level, whatever, people, wherever you want to go with it. So,
and I'll take a moment to welcome Henry, Sharon, and Susan to our call. And who would like to talk first with Eileen? Is there an observation or a question?
I have a question. I'd like to know more. Thank you so much for that introduction, Eileen. It was really helpful to put it in context, and beautiful, really, really beautiful. I was wondering if you could speak more about the steps and the process of forgiveness, more generally and conceptually.
mm-hmm. Sure. That's a good question. So when I started teaching forgiveness, well, actually I was contacted by Sonoma State University, and they asked me to teach a class on it. And I realized I didn't really know that much about it, and I kind of put them off a few times. And then I decided that I wanted to learn, and I started studying all the other teachers on forgiveness and looking at their approaches. And I found a few that I thought were really good. And I borrowed from them, but I also, so I'm going to tell you, it ended up looking to me that there were 4 layers of forgiveness. And so I'll tell you what those are. And some of them so the first one I found was Fred Luskin's work. Fred is a well-known teacher from Stanford and wrote a book called Forgive for Good. And that was one of the first things that I came across. And it was a powerful book for me, because Fred talked about, he said things like, anybody can learn how to do this. And I thought, okay, well then I want to learn, and things like that. So I learned his method, and it turns out that Fred's method, it's very much on a sort of, I would say, mental, on the level of the mind. Like, how are you thinking about this? What are your beliefs? And what's the narrative, and things like that. And it's very powerful. And so I, with his permission, incorporated that into my process that I created. And then there was another well-known teacher called Colin Tipping, who also had a powerful approach. It's called radical forgiveness. And his is what I would call more spiritual. And it was more like, if you had signed a contract before you were born that said you were going to come here and have this, challenge in order to learn some important life lessons, what would those lessons have been? And, he would take people to that perspective, and he would say, even if you don't believe that, and of course some people do, but even if you don't, you could still try to look at it from that point of view and try to find the place from which you would realize that there's really nothing to forgive. And it's just, these things happened and I learned these things from it. And this was an experience. And so I thought that was powerful too, but I felt like I also appreciated that not everybody's going to be able to go there. And so I liked what it offered, and I liked Fred's. And then I found that neither of them were really addressing the emotional level, which seems like it's always the piece left out. I mean, I don't know, how many of you have been trained as mediators? Just show of hands. So many of you. And how many in your mediation training were taught about emotions and working with difficult emotions? A couple of you. So I wasn't, and I took like over 600 hours of mediation training, and nobody ever said, here's what you do when people are really angry or upset. And I just thought that was just astounding to me. I actually ended up teaching some of those classes because I just felt like it was so missing. And it's definitely a really important part of forgiveness. And I think all of these layers are important. So I think the mental layer is important because we are, you know, creatures of the mind to a large extent. And so, you know, if the mind's not on board, it's going to be hard to do anything else. But I always feel like the emotions are really the glue. The emotion, you know, where we usually are having a hard time is emotionally. And many times people will say things to me like, well, I thought I had forgiven, or I intended to forgive. I want to, and usually it's because they haven't done the emotional work. So that was the piece that I brought in to, so I had the mental and the spiritual, and then this emotional work, which I really feel like is at the heart of it. And then the spiritual, so sometimes it's kind of like what Colin Tipping says, which is, well, maybe there's nothing to forgive and it's all just what it was supposed to be. But I also added some other possibilities into that. Like I think there is a, you know, it's kind of very Buddhist in a way, like there's nothing to forgive. And some people really can, that's helpful to them. And for a lot of people, it's really not. Like, how can you say there's nothing to forgive? So I feel like even if you don't feel that way, it's still possible to stand back and say, you know, this really was hard, but I did learn a lot from it. I did get a lot out of that experience. And many of us have had those kind of life experiences. Maybe you lost a job or a relationship that at the time just seemed like, wow, this is like the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And then much later be able to look back and say, well, maybe that was a good thing after all, because that happened, then, you know, I got this other job that was way better. I met this other person. So it's more like that if we could try to, you know, look at it from a point of view of being down the road, how might it look like it really contributed to us? So I kind of opened that piece up for people a bit. And then the last one is more what I would call the somatic, because I think that, you know, we're starting to appreciate that as much as we are very identified with our minds, we also have these bodies, and a lot of our especially trauma, but, you know, many of our emotional life experiences are also experienced and rooted in the body. And so the body has its cellular memory, and it's also important to address that. So we try in this process to, you know, also listen to the body and what the body has to say. And I find that that's often where, you know, some of the most powerful information can come about what's really, where is this really stuck? Or it's not the word I usually use, but what is really needed here? And often it's surprising, you know, but the body has a lot of good clues for us. So those are the pieces, all those pieces go into this the process that I developed. I laid it out in sort of a linear 12-step way, but it's not real, you know, but it's really just sort of that when we experience something in life, we you know, we experience on all those levels, emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually perhaps. And so if you're going to really have a complete forgiveness, a complete release, it also has to happen on all those levels. It needs to be released from the body as well as the mind and the emotions. So that's a bit about the process, about how it works. It's not something that I could, you know, like, I can give you a summary of it in this amount of time. I can't kind of do more than that, but hopefully that gives you some idea about it. It's not a bypass, you know, and I think a lot of times why people are a little suspicious of forgiveness is that a lot of approaches until, you know, this point are like when people say, well, just forgive. When you're a child and someone says, well, just forgive your brother, that's just lip service, you know, and we haven't really ever been presented with something that feels very authentic often, or been told or taught, well, how do you do it beyond that? And so there's a lot to it, but it's not, you know, those different ones of those aspects will play bigger or smaller parts in any one particular person's experience. So it's not that they're all, you know, necessarily going to be deep and difficult. That's usually not the case. Usually they'll, you know, but one of those will be the one that's really the one that kind of helps somebody unhook. So what else would you like to talk about? Yes.
So one of the questions that I have for you, it may be jumping ahead a little bit, but I want to know about the Peace Center.
Ah, the Peace Center. You know, on the plane yesterday, Kim, I started writing that article that you asked me, you had invited me to write. And I finally, like I had set aside that time, that 5-hour plane ride, so I have at least a really good outline of it. The idea of the Peace Center is that I feel like so, you know, my path from being a mediator to forgiveness teacher and all of the things along the way, like nonviolent communication, and I've been studying, you know, I'm sure some of you have too, restorative justice, and all of these amazing modalities and tools. And I feel like there's this huge disconnect in our society with all this conflict and all this divisiveness on the one hand, and then on this other hand, all of these colleagues that I have who have all this information, all these tools, and the need to kind of want to see these things come together. And so my idea, my vision of it is to have a peace center where people, you know, and it's kind of like, if I think of it on a community level, like that there be a place in a community where if you have conflict, you go. Like, that's not the courthouse, because the courthouse is, you know, sort of one kind of approach that, you know, I think is we're all familiar with that, but something that's an alternative to that, that really helps people heal conflict more in the way that I've been talking about, and I imagine your group has been talking about. And so a place where people can have that opportunity to really look with, you know, say they're in a conflict, but to step back and see, well, what is this about for me? What is it I most really need to learn about this? And how could I, you know, societally, we're so oriented to the conflict being about the other person and what they're going to do or not do, and the blame and all of that. But this is a whole different approach, where it's really about, you know, if indeed Ken Cloak is right, and that this is, you know, an opportunity, like, let's step back and help these people see, well, what is the opportunity? What is the gift you've been given here? And to avail yourself of it, and to see what's here for you to learn, with the support of people who can help, you know, coach people through that. But also, you know, I really envision it as very interdisciplinary, so that it could involve art therapy and movement and sound healing and body work. And, you know, conflict is very wounding. I just, you know, realize that at some point. I think it's wounding to our soul, or is the deepest you can go. I mean, I don't think our soul really gets wounded particularly, but the next layer of us, that, you know, because it causes a separation that we may be numb to it because we're so accustomed to this. But I think that when we let ourselves feel what's really there, it goes against what we know is true, which is, you know, connection and oneness and so forth. So here we have this separation and mistrust and fear, and it's very wounding in a very deep way. And so I would like there to be all these modalities that people can avail themselves of to have this deep level of healing. And out of that, then come back together. I mean, in the ideal world, if I were designing it, I would say, you know, take a week or two or whatever, and really look at this for yourself. And then after you've kind of really made sense of it, then have a conversation with the other person and it might look really different at that point. And hopefully then I think about, like, in restorative circles, there's this idea of pre-circle work, and the pre-circle work is all about being ready to sit with the other person. Are you ready to hear what they have to say, and so forth? And so again, helping people achieve that, and then bringing them together so that they can really hear each other and have mutual empathy, and then help, you know, problem solve in a way that would address everybody's needs, which is really the promise of mediation, but it's not what's happening in mediation. I was in a mediation today. I'm here in Toronto for a mediation. And, you know, they put us in separate rooms. And these are people that could easily have been in the same room, but the mediator said, no, I just find this easier. So, okay. So, you know, we're never going to talk to each other. We're going to go back and forth. And, you know, we did pretty well, but it's sad. So really finding pathways to true healing, because if we can't do that, you know, really we have conflict is everywhere, right? It's part of life, and I see it as one of our greatest problems, because it's underneath every other problem, is our inability to resolve our problems in a you know, constructive and sort of you know, very respectful way. And so it's like, and I feel like we're the ones that know how to do that. And so this is the idea of the peace centers, to make that available to people. And sometimes I've had mediation clients who wanted to have this healing as well as the mediation. And so those were the cases where I was really able to see this in practice, like a divorce where there was just so much anger, they could hardly sit in the room together. And then they agreed to do this inner work, and discovered, you know, the wife was furious that the husband had abandoned her. You know, he decided he was going to leave. She felt completely abandoned. And so in doing her separate inner work, what she discovered, when I said, well, you know, have you ever experienced that before? Oh, yeah. She said, wow, it just came to her in a flash. This is how I felt when I was 5 years old and my father died. And I had been so close to him, and then suddenly he was gone, and I felt completely abandoned. And I never grieved, because I was 5, and my mom and grandmother were just trying to make it okay and make sure I was okay. So it was huge for her to realize that there was this deeper thing going on underneath what was happening with her husband. And then with him, I said, what, you know, it's like identifying, like, what's really the core of it. Oh, she criticizes me all the time. Nothing I could do is right. I couldn't stand it another minute. Okay, that's a pattern. So what, you know, is that familiar to you? Have you ever experienced that before? Oh, yes, this is exactly how my mother treated me. And I'm telling you that this I find to be universally true. Not to oversimplify it, but it is it's remarkable to me that it's like we have this wounding at an early time in our life, and until it's integrated, until there's resolution, it appears that we recreate other experiences, and that map right onto that one. And so when people can see that and connect the dots, it's not that the immediate problem it disappears, but it takes some of you know, you realize that this isn't just your husband, it's really a bigger deal. So it takes some of the pressure off, and it makes more space for people to forgive and to say, okay, now, you know, I see this is a lot about me and, you know, what I brought to it. And that can make all the difference. So it's this kind of work that I realize is it's not something for everybody, that everyone's going to feel ready to do or open to do, but nevertheless, it's very powerful. And you know, I have been working with many people who you know, find this to be so valuable, and they're so grateful for it that it definitely has me want to make it more available to people. So that's
So Eileen, one of the things we've been talking about is that the system is now not designed for the world that you're talking about,
right.
and that it's designed for that separation. And so that's the article or the chapter for the book that Eileen is working on, is how to design for this. Does anybody else have something they want to bring into the conversation?
I do. I'm curious if, Eileen, if you've had any shamanic experience or experience with shamanic work, because what you're describing is actually a very shamanic kind of approach. That's saying, that there's a pattern, that once you get under the pattern, and it's a soul retrieval, essentially, when...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, a little experience, and I noticed that you have that background, and it interested me a lot, Hilda, to see that. And I agree. I mean, I have experienced that. I haven't studied it and I don't lead journeys, but I think that that's the kind of thing I'd love to see in the Peace Center, because different, these things are very personal. And for one person, what they need, the shamanic work. I mean, there have been times in my life where that shamanic work is what really got me over that, particular edge. And so that's kind of my vision, is to have, or my dream, and have all these modalities available as needed, because it's not necessarily one thing, it's meant all these things, and we, that we've all tapped into, and they're all powerful for the right time, the right person. So yes, I'm glad, that's exactly what I'm talking about, that kind of, really core healing work. I mean, people, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, do you find that in a like mediation or in a more traditional setting, people are able to get there? I'm curious how, because it sometimes feels like quite a journey, literally. No pun intended. Like how easy or hard is it to have a conversation and have somebody sort of go from intellect and chatting about it to really that realization of like, oh my God, this is a lifetime pattern.
Right. It's a good question. I mean, so the way my life is set up right now is that I sort of have these two practices. I have a mediation practice and I have a forgiveness practice. And so I have many people who come like to my forgiveness retreats or for coaching, who they're ready for forgiveness work, and that's what they're coming for. And then I have people in mediation, I would say, mostly just want mediation and they're not ready for that, but sometimes they are. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm talking to lawyers, for example, full on, I just say, just let them know that's something you do, and put it on the menu of possibilities, and it may surprise you once. I mean, I've had many people say, I'm interested in that. That's what we need. And that's why they come to me. It's 1 out of 10. It's not everybody, but those are amazing cases. And then I have these people who just come to me for consulting because they're about to go to a mediation, or they're in a litigation and things aren't going well. And I have had they have had amazing results just by aligning themselves, like I said before, with their heart, with whatever, higher power they relate to, just by getting back to who they are. It's amazing. It really spins my head. I'll say the next day the person calls them, or the next day they finally get an offer, or things open up out of that. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that, to Kim's point, of course, it's not part of our culture at all. Even for me now, writing this on the plane, I write it, and then I go, this is crazy. This is going to seem so crazy. How could I suggest that people are going to do all this work? But that's the whole point. It's like we have things that would make a big difference. And how do we create a culture that supports it? The more that we do it, and the more the culture shifts, and the more that people experience it, then the more, it'll get easier and easier and easier. It's hard because, we truly are, pioneers. We truly are, out there trying to say, hey, there's a better way, there's a different way. And so it is that challenge of being at the, at that edge, cutting edge. It is. it's just, you know, even for myself, like I'm saying, even just to write this down, but to say, well, it is what I know. It is what I think would make a big difference. And so I think, you know, it helps me appreciate a group like this, where what Kim's talking about, creating community, because we have to support each other, because it's really big. It's a huge shift. But, you know, it's the thing that I guess keeps me going is when you see how it works.
Mhm.
You know, it's like almost like miraculous. And Fred Luskin, people like Fred Luskin, who's so brilliant and one of the but he is so supportive. He's anytime, you know, I'm going to be in, he wants this work to come to lawyers. He sees how much it's needed. So I feel like he stands behind me with that. Ken Cloak, who some of you know, and he's one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. He's, you know, just I have good allies. So where my own self-doubt could take me down, I just have to remember, wait, I'm not alone. Kim, all of you, you know, we all see it, and we have to, and the world needs this. That's really clear. So having the courage is kind of comes down to that.
We have time for one more comment or question before we're going to ask Hilda to close our space. One more. Gail?
I had a question. If no one else does, I already asked one. So I wanted to understand more the connection that you see between forgiveness work and what's happening with resilience work, like trauma resilience and the research that's been going on.
That's a great question.
Yeah, I'm sort of aware of resilience and Brene Brown, but I haven't really followed that work specifically. So I don't know if I can really connect those two things. I certainly could tell you that, you know, like right now, every year now, I take a group of people they've been through my process for themselves. That's where the work begins. So now I have a small group of people. It's like 3 or 4 who are in a coach. I'm training them to be coaches, and 2 in this year are lawyers, and 2 do other things. And I watch the transformation. So starting with, I mean, it's always different, but I'm thinking of this one. I mean, I can definitely tell you that when people do the healing of their core wounds, I mean, it's beyond resilience. I mean, it's resilience times 100. It makes you very resilient. What's happening, we just met yesterday, and it was really beautiful, is that people are at this point in the process where they're really, and I don't talk about this too much because it's so personal, but they're really coming into alignment with what I would call their higher self or their spiritual self. And because once you get all the core wounds out of the way, that's what's left, you know, it's who you really are. And the thing is that it was so cool. So a lot of times we think of that as out there somewhere, like, oh, my higher self. And so like this one woman yesterday, she said, I can connect to it, but I don't know how to really feel. It's like she connects to it, but it's like as something separate from her. And I had been saying, but you know, it's not really separate from you. And she said, well, I don't know how to feel that. And then I can just sense that her mind's going to start, you know, coming in with a million reasons why she can't. So I asked her to just close her eyes and breathe into her heart and get in touch with that place. And within about, you know, 30 seconds, there she is feeling that sense of spirit, higher self right there in her heart. And it's like, what's separating you from that? Nothing. She can feel the mind starting to say, I don't know, can it really be this easy? And it's like, yes, it can. So it's like, and so as I watch these women who are coming into that place of just knowing themselves as part of the whole, you know, that we're all a part of, that's not separate. It's so empowering. I mean, it's just so beautiful. And they all feel that, you know, the things that they've been struggling with, you know, are shifting for them. It's a very, you know, in this, at that level, it's a very spiritual kind of a journey. But for me, it's really just coming home to who we really are. That unfortunately, most of us just weren't told that. And so we have these life experiences that maybe are difficult ones, especially when we're young. And those experiences form our identity. And then we think that's who I am. You know, I'm somebody who gets abandoned, or I'm somebody who's not lovable, or whatever it is. And that is, you know, and so in a way, in a simple way, I could say it's about just saying that's not who I am. That's just something I experienced. And then coming back into really feeling who I really am. So I think that's the ultimate resilience, I guess, is what I'd say. But, you know, I don't, like I said, I'm not sure exactly how it's being talked about, but that's my experience of forgiveness. At the deepest level, you know, it's not that, not everybody goes to that full on deepest level in their forgiveness work. Everyone goes as far as they're ready to go, but that's what's available, which I imagine is where it starts sounding a lot like the shamanic journeying or any of these other modalities that kind of take you all the way, all the way down to the core of who you really are as a being. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Eileen. Thanks for, I think she's in a hotel room in Toronto somewhere joining us. So thank you for what it took and for sharing with us. And Hilda, I'm going to turn it back to you to close the space in whatever way makes sense. And then if you want to stay on and chat a little bit, we'll turn over the recording.
Sounds good. So if everyone would like to come back to your breath, whether you keep your eyes open or closed is up to you. Just sending your energy and attention into your body and into your heart space. Sensing, breathing there, sensing whatever is present for you. And setting an intention that whatever you received in this powerful call, whatever message, whatever information, whatever practice, that it simply is integrated, that it comes back to you in whatever way is powerful for you to understand, if it's something to be carried forth through you. Just open to receive. And a few more deep grounding breaths to fully integrate the experience. And when you feel ready, come back to opening your eyes, come back to your space. I'll send it back to you, Kim.